back to the Telosive Tech Podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Take Two. Actually, we're using...
Take Two Interactive.
Yeah, that's right.
I didn't know we're making games.
We're making games now. I'm very excited to announce today's in-person episode is not in person. This is an AI effect we're using. We just plugged into Google's new...
Gemini?
No, what's their...
Oh, one of their specific AI things? Sora? No, not Sora.
Verde.
Vita?
Vita.
Most capable generative video model called VO.
Something like that. Know. We plugged in to make a tech podcast that was shot in Mike's office, and this is what the result is. So it looks like we're in the same room together.
I'm sorry, Drew. I cannot generate that statement for you at this moment.
So if anything just feels a little off, it's because...
Well, obviously we don't have Randy. That's why it's off.
Yeah. Well, can we just rant about OBS a little bit?
Let's rant about OBS for at least 30 minutes, Drew, because I'm pretty angry. So for those, to get everyone up to date on what we've been experiencing over the past, maybe not 24 hours, probably the last 12 hours or something like that.
Yeah.
Drew is in town, and we wanted to pull a fast one on Randy during the podcast. And in that, we might have some footage that we can maybe show.
Yeah, I downloaded it, so we can show what the bit would have been.
Yeah. It's
just you can't hear Randy.
What? What did I say? It's not like I said anything about iMac or anything like that. Man, I am going to get slapped or something. Oh, I angered him. He's gone. He's gone. It's so... What the heck?
Sorry. Just had to do something real quick. I'm back.
Yeah. So pretty much, Randy didn't know that Drew was in town. Drew set up in a guest room that we have.
Right next to you.
Right next to us, but the sound wasn't that apparent to where you could hear either of us on the other's recordings. And so at one point, I just kept on mentioning IMAX. And
the newest one, the ugly one.
The best one, in my opinion. It is technically the best. Anyways.
Technically.
The bit was Drew got angry about IMAX.
Right, and Randy did not know we were in the same... So he thought I was on some trip somewhere else. Mm-hmm. But then suddenly I just jump off camera and run into Mike's office and choke him out. Yep. And Randy's reaction was... I'm trying to remember. I was busy choking you, so I wasn't sure how he reacted. But
he was slightly enthusiastic, but also how did I...
He was confused, and he was just like, oh my God. He was just like, we're a bunch of dorks. Or something along those lines. But
there's a whole lot less censoring that I have to do probably in this podcast compared to the last one.
There was a lot of work that went into it, though. We were planting the seeds that you were ticking me off throughout the show.
What this tells me, though, is that the car thing screen was totally not worth it. But definitely the iMac that's still being sold and is being put in many businesses right now is a great seller, and there's no reason not to buy one at this point.
No.
The iMac. Yeah. I had an iMac. It's still being sold.
We're over the... I'm so sick of... Look, I visited my family last week, and they had the new iMac, and it upset me. We had to leave early, and
What color did they
done.
Have?
Blue. It doesn't matter. It's not important. I don't want to talk about the iMac anymore, if that's possible.
It actually kind of looks like the yellow iMac. That hue. It's not too far from it.
Why did you say that name? Why do you keep bringing it up?
It's not like I said anything about iMac or anything like that.
So I didn't do that until 30 minutes in, and it was going to be a funny, great bit, but OBS has been so buggy.
Yes, so that's what killed it, is the fact that we got done with tech. It was about an hour and 30 minutes of tech podcast. And then we had some issues with EV recording, which then prompted Randy, on Randy's side. Randy then checked tech to see if any of these issues that he was seeing in EV happen on tech. Turns out all the audio was gone from his side.
Even though the video was fine, and he was using the exact same settings as before. He was monitoring the waveform. So it's like
he could see the audio.
It was channeling in. Yeah. It was all plugged in as usual. So this was a new bug. This was not like the same bug we had with the M2 MacBook Air.
The whole overcode.
Where it said encoding overloaded.
Yeah.
The chip just overheated and basically corrupted the file. So now that there's a new bug unlocked, I mean, for the most part, OBS...
New bug unlocked.
Yeah. New OBS bug. I mean, for the most part, they've been fine, but we keep having issues like this in the past.
We've had
audio issues or file corruption issues, and I've been having more bugs lately where I don't change any settings, but it makes me super quiet. So then I have to add a filter on it to increase the gain. And then I come back and it's super loud and it's not consistent. So there's just been so many unreliable aspects of it that we've decided after yesterday's attempt at recording that we were all there for it. It was funny and we tried really hard, but lost it. It's just like, we need to find a different setup.
Sure.
Especially now that you have fast internet. We're going to try a new system where basically we're going to be able to record whatever the host call is. Because it drove us nuts that we could hear Randy and see Randy the entire time.
There's some parts where he'd freeze.
Well, he'd freeze up, but you could hear him.
That's his camera setup issue.
Yeah,
That's not an audio issue.
No.
That's a video issue.
We could hear him the entire time just fine. OBS says it can hear him just fine. He's recording on OBS, and it doesn't, for whatever reason, just didn't capture the audio.
I think it's a MacBook Pro issue. It's happened with... Well, okay, maybe.
That was an error.
Never mind. I can't make that assertion. Never mind. I was going to...
To be fair, me and Randy use OBS a lot.
Right, that's your businesses.
Yeah, we do.
Mine is just on the studio, which I don't need. I definitely, at this point, every time I...
No, you had an air overheat once when you were in the truck.
Yeah, but that was in, like, San Diego in the summer on a heat advisory was going on. And I was sitting in a truck without air conditioning.
Right, but my point is we've established there's an issue when we all try to record locally. There's something wrong if we can hear you and we're talking to you on the call. Mm-hmm. Why can't we just take that call, whatever we're receiving, we're going to record that and save that instead of expecting your CPU to be writing the whole time and have to worry about it overheating.
Something that we do have to take into consideration, though, is connection speed. Because a good example that I can think of right now is IGN, the people who have been making gaming news content for decades now, I think, at this point.
Gamer Network.
Yeah. They do a podcast where they pretty much do something like that where they record the call.
Yep, that's what most do anyway.
The setbacks with that is sometimes people don't have the best connection.
Yeah.
And so they get a little bit buggy.
I would rather have that than lose the whole thing, though. Which seems to be the outcome a lot of the time, is like, if the recordings can seem fine for 30 minutes, but then if it overheats at the 30-minute mark, you lost the whole thing.
Yep.
Whereas if we lose signal halfway through, at least we can salvage what.
And there's probably two of us that have most likely decent connection to carry on the podcast.
Most of the time we're recording from our homes.
Yeah.
And the connection's been fine. So I think we're going to go a bit more of the traditional route as far as the recording goes. There's a couple of different sites we're looking at that should let us kind of move around our face cams and show the screen of whatever we're talking about. I've seen other channels do it. So I think our process just has been over-engineered. It's a little too many things.
There's too many failure points.
Yeah.
I think is the best way to put it, because we're all recording on OBS.
Yep.
With hopefully the settings that are the same, but with different machines. And even so, with these local machines we're recording, we're hoping the environment's fine.
Yeah.
And that the computer's fine.
Yeah.
And the software is all fine.
Right.
Where in fact that along with all the hardware that we're using for both video and audio is okay. That's a lot of failure points.
Yeah, as we've discovered.
And so, many times over the past year, we've lost many. Even with a good one was when the Model 3 refreshed, even though this is a tech podcast.
Oh, yeah.
Model 3 refresh, we lost that one as well.
Yeah.
And that was 4 of us recording. So that's 4 4 people recording locally.
Right.
And then there was many points of failure on all 4 of us.
Right.
So it's like, it's almost like building a rocket. Like, just thinking about making one small section of it, there's millions of points of failure that you could think of probably with like bolts tightening and everything else, welds not holding it together for some reason.
It was very frustrating.
So that's
especially when it's a good one. Sometimes you lose an episode and you're like, I didn't feel great about that one anyway.
Yeah.
But when you lose a good one, it's very upsetting.
Randy tweeted out immediately, I think like a couple hours later. He's like, it's always the good ones that go.
Yeah, that was annoying.
It was a pretty fun one. I would say like it was the best podcast ever, but it was pretty entertaining.
It was
for us. Maybe not for the audience because they were having to try to figure out, for the audio listeners trying to figure out like what the heck is going on.
Yeah, it would have been a fun reveal, but there should be more fun bits we get to do in the future with more in-person recordings.
Well, now you're just teasing stuff that we haven't solidified.
Like this one.
There we go.
Yeah. See,
it's just this.
There's less latency problems. There's less connection problems because
we have.
I mean, this whole thing is AI. So.
We're running AI, but also in this AI simulation that we've got going on, we have 2 iPhones doing all the work pretty much. I have an iPad in front of me, but it's mainly just for looking at either news or notes.
If it's good enough for Apple, it's good enough for us.
The iPhones have not had issues. This entire time that we've been doing the podcast, I don't think there's been one problem with our iPhones.
They've been the constant, especially when you use the onboard native apps, voice memo and camera. That's it. That's just what's built in, and they work.
And that's something we have to figure out is whether we can find some free software that is stable.
Yeah.
Or if we might need to throw in $5 into something that does cost money, but is stable. And has a great track record.
Free one. We'll see. We'll play around with it later. But
whether we find something that is stable and free, or if we need to put some investment in, we'll figure it out.
We'll figure it out.
Yeah.
We got it. We're changing things up. That's all we're saying. For hopefully more consistency.
Mind our dust is pretty much what we're also trying to
anyways
incorporate.
That's enough behind the scenes crap.
So Randy's not here. Dang it.
He's behind that wall, but
behind the Iron Man 3 poster that I got here.
Yeah.
You like my
this
office?
This is a good setup. I like it.
I don't think we've actually...
These are all things I'm interested in.
We've never really acknowledged... I think in the EV one that we did in person, the first time... First time being recently. We didn't acknowledge my setup of my office. And for those just listening, I've got... I think in our view, we've got 3 posters and then a desk in between us. But the posters are on the wall. And we got... Was it a Halo 4 I don't know why I'm having such a hard problem with words these days. Halo 4 poster, an Iron Man 3 poster, and a Revenge of the Sith poster.
Good choices.
And every single time I look at the Revenge of the Sith poster, I see all of the issues that the artist made in it. Like Anakin having a drooped sleeve on one arm, but not on the other side. So it's like he's wearing a robe, but he's not wearing a robe. And it kind of annoys me. And the Iron Man 3 poster, it keeps on reminding me that movie wasn't the best.
It's pretty good.
And then Halo 4, many can say they did not enjoy it because it was a departure from Bungie's vision of Halo, and it was 343 trying to start something. But I'd say...
Thanks for ruining all...
I ruined all 3 posters, but for all of them, they have a common theme of I'm a nerd and I love...
Yes.
Either futuristic power armor... And also fantasy stuff.
That's fair.
I guess it's sci-fi. It's not necessarily fantasy.
Well, speaking of nerd talk, last weekend I actually got to play with the new iPads.
Okay.
In person. And I had some time to kill while we were at a charger. And they had them out on display at the mall. And
did you get to play with the new pencil as well?
I did. Okay. Yes.
I'm more interested in that, of course, from our last podcast.
I would say it's... nothing about I'm grateful that I did not buy these to review because nothing really about what we said or thought on the record previously really changed after using it in person. I was just like, oh yeah, the shadow. That's kind of cool. But it shows up more, I think, in pictures and videos because you have to hold the camera
you're not
a certain way.
You're not staring at the shadow while you're...
I wouldn't be shocked if someone used the Apple Pencil Pro for like a year and never noticed the shadow thing.
Sure.
It's because when you're normally using it, it just... You can't see it, which is kind of funny that they put so much detail into that. It's neat, but... Yeah, the most impressive thing was definitely the display. There's no debate there.
On the Pro.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, the OLED gets very bright. It's very vibrant. It makes the frame rate feel a little bit smoother. I'm not sure why. I think there's something with OLED that makes refresh rates feel a little more rounded, more blended together. I noticed it when I switched to a OLED on the iPhone that had ProMotion. I was like, oh wow, this is really rich. But aside from that, the thinness. Some people kept saying the weight of it was super noticeable. I didn't find it that different. I was like, well, how often are you going to use it outside of its case anyway? Most of the time, the iPad will live in its keyboard case or in a folio case. And those cases were not that light. The thickness of the keyboard case was almost the same as the iPad.
It is noticeably heavier. For those listening, I have my Mini in front of me with its folio case.
The amount of times you're going to use it like this, though,
never.
I would say is close to
without
never.
its case.
Yeah, without its cover on. So.
It is noticeable it not having a case and then putting the case on. It does feel a bit heavier, but then you take the case off and then you feel the case, and the case feels ultra light. You're like, wow, it does stack up.
But now imagine you add metal to this and a keyboard and a trackpad with a haptic engine.
Sure.
It's, with the Pro, I have very little to complain about with this. This is great. But the Pros is like, you're going to boast about thinness and lightness, but most of its life, it's in that keyboard case. And with the keyboard case, it is not that thin and light.
No, it's heavy.
It's much thicker and much heavier than a Air, which is cheaper, arguably.
Well, it decreases the weight overall at the end of the day. If you're comparing last year, well, maybe not last year's, a couple years ago.
A little bit. Yeah, it's, again.
Something that I don't really like is something that's really thin and also wide.
Yeah.
Because then it's kind of gangly to hold on to, and you can't really wrap your hands around it as much because it's much thinner. You don't get enough material to kind of clamp onto with the meaty part of your hands. With that crease where it's a lot thinner and it's kind of jabbing you a little bit more.
Right.
Or something that is like the Mini right now, even though it is thin, and I can barely imagine something thinner than it. I don't know if it is that same thickness as the Pro as it is now, but even so with the Mini now, it's perfect thickness for me. And even with the case,
no one was complaining about
maybe not even perfect.
Thickness.
Actually, I would prefer something just a tad bit thicker by like a few millimeters.
Yeah.
Not necessarily saying that I want a dummy thick tablet.
No, just a little more.
I just need a little bit more thickness to grab onto.
Sure.
And trying to hold something with one hand and trying to read something. I mean, it's nice with an iPad mini because you can. But with like a Pro, I would like the opportunity to just use one hand.
Sure.
Not necessarily to scroll and do a bunch of gestures just like an iPhone, because that's what the iPhone does best, even though it's getting bigger.
Just like page turn type thing.
But yeah, just page turning or moving, scrolling up or down, that's all I need.
Yeah.
And so having something that's really thin and really wide is a little bit tougher to handle, where something that's a little bit thick and smaller. I guess this is what this is revealing to me, is that I am definitely not a Pro iPad user.
Yes.
Or an Air user.
I'm not sure who is yet at this point. I'm trying to figure that out.
Students.
I would say students are more budget conscious, and that's not a cheap device at all.
Sure.
And I would say, I remember back in the day talking with medical students on the channel. They said the iPad mini was perfect because they could fit it in their lab coats.
Yeah.
Their lab coats pocket. So I would still say, if you're a student looking to take notes or draw or something, I guess the only downside is the mini is still a 60 hertz LCD. So if you've got lots of money and you like note taking and drawing,
something else I was looking at as well was the Remarkable tablet.
Those are cool. My cousin has
It's
one.
like paper-like surface and all that, but it's like e-ink as well.
E-ink is underrated. It is a really cool technology.
I think this shows that e-ink is still relevant.
It is.
Remarkable.
Oh, it very much is.
It's not like the Kindles where you can't do anything with it. Like you're only able
everyone
to press a button on the
associates e-ink to be this cheap, like low-quality display because
inexperience.
Yeah, because that's all people have probably experienced with e-ink is just those really cheap basic Kindles. But the Remarkable brand has made these really high resolution, high quality e-ink screens, and they look good. Like they are.
I would like to try one out at some point.
They
honestly.
are nutty. It feels very much like you're looking at a piece of paper, and it just happens to be a moving piece of paper. It's like Harry Potter or something. Like she was showing me, my cousin's a published author, and she was writing a lot on it, and she was reading books on it and stuff, and she was letting me play around with it. And I was like, dang, this is
The stylus or pencil, or I guess they call it a marker, looks pretty good as well.
yeah.
It's not something that I would actively use in my life.
You'd have to be, I think, reading a lot and writing a lot for it to be worth it. And they know that. They're not trying to say this is an iPad competitor.
No, they're going all in on this is a
Because-
note-taking tablet.
Right. You wouldn't watch movies on it. You wouldn't watch content on it. It wouldn't be good for...
You would download a car.
No. It wouldn't be good for social media, which is a perk to some. They wanted to... I think I remember seeing the ad for Remarkable, and they were kind of emphasizing the fact that this doesn't try to grab your attention, you know? Like if you're looking at most other tablets or phones, they're constantly having notifications ping you. They're constantly like...
Ads all over the place.
And this was just focused on like, let's do a few things really great.
Here's a great note-taking app.
Yeah.
Have
Or here's
fun.
a good e-reader.
I also realized that the stylus fits into the tablet as well. It's thick enough for the stylus to fit in there.
And I'm glad you actually brought this up. The reason this doesn't bother me with its white bezel is because the screen changes to that color when it's off by default.
Yeah.
That's my whole point. It's like,
Okay.
as long as they match, if they have this seamless, just like consistent color scheme, I wouldn't mind the 24-inch iMac as much if the screen turned white when it was off.
If the iMac was an display.
That's what the eMac, we're bringing it back.
That would be an interesting idea, is like the iMac wasn't, like it fit into its own new category of it was a more affordable. It takes pretty much like the Air placement in the Mac lineup, but not for laptops, but for desktops, where like the Studio or the Mac Mini would take more of that. It's a typical desktop that you would buy.
Yeah. iMac's just been the all-in-one.
It'd fit in line with what the iMac kind of embodies. It's the quirky desktop that has colors on it.
The quirky.
It is.
Yeah. Well, I mean, back in the day when computers were big beige boxes, it was quite a rethinking, because it was like the idea of just having one cable you plug in and that does everything. It's your monitor, it's the computer and your speakers and everything.
Sure.
But nowadays, when we have phones and tablets and laptops that are all thin and light, a desktop that's an all-in-one doesn't feel that.
No. And to be fair, this is a company focusing on one particular use case. And with a product that seems like it's somewhat nailing it.
Yeah.
In which I want to see more people using these and try to get a better rounded opinion on what this thing can do.
You should find one. You should try one.
Yeah.
One time.
It costs like, I think, $400 or something like that. $500 if you want like the Marker Plus or whatever.
Yeah.
But $400 starting price on their site.
Very different price than a Pro
Yeah.
iPad, which starts at $1,000. If you want, I'm not sure how big this one is, but if you want the bigger iPad Pro, it's like $1,300 starting.
Wow.
And that's before a pencil or keyboard case. It's so hard to justify at that price. But I think Apple has probably nailed down the car salesman approach to sales.
Well, also the tablet, their iPad does a lot more than what this product Remarkable does.
I was getting back to the pricing argument of
Sure.
I honestly feel like the Airs, which are kind of embarrassing, the price and
It sounded like in the last
display.
podcast that we talked about, you weren't a fan of the Airs for their display and everything that they embody.
It's like the first time since 2015 that they've released a 13-inch iPad that's 60 hertz.
Does it push more of the narrative that I was kind of pointing at in the last podcast, being maybe we should get rid of the regular iPad and then it should just be the Air and the Mini?
Maybe, but what I'm getting at is I think Apple knows that this model works better because the Air is the decoy.
Okay.
I think this is the decoy effect in full swing, which is that you get people in the door with the Air. Mm-hmm. You say, there's new iPads that just came out. They start at $599. And someone walks in and goes, oh, okay, so this is the new one. Yeah, but also there's a bigger one now. Mm-hmm. And that's $800 or whatever. Okay, so I guess there's a bigger one if I like the big screen. Yeah, but if you got up to $800, it's actually just a couple hundred more to get to the $1,000 for the Pro. Oh, and the Pro has OLED and the nicer screen and all that. Oh, and just a couple $100 more to get the keyboard case and the pencil. But at that price point, you might as well get the 13-inch Pro. And they've likely analyzed this walk-in experience millions of times and figured out that your best use case is to get people in the door by telling them, hey, we have a new $599 iPad. Okay, but you let them play around with the iPads in there. They use them a little bit. They play with the pencil. They look at the screens. And they're able to slowly walk you up the pricing ladder to where you walked in to spend $600 and you walk out spending $1,500. I think they've analyzed that a bunch of times and figured out that, no, it helps to have these slow steps, even though we see them and go, yeah, obviously that's not worth it. You shouldn't buy that. Mm-hmm. But they use it as a marketing technique to slowly creep you up to the higher prices. Yeah. So that's my theory as to why the iPad Airs are there. I don't think it's because they're actually that great. It's just like, I mean, if someone buys them, great, but I hope you enjoy. But it's mainly just to get people more comfortable with the Pro pricing. Sure. But are they going to use them all that differently? Yeah.
I was also looking at the thinness of the Remarkable and comparing it to the Pro iPad.
Oh, yeah.
The Remarkable is actually, they tout this on their websites, the world's thinnest tablet.
How thin?
4.7 millimeters.
Jeez.
The Pro is 5.1.
Holy crap.
And then the Air is, I think, 6.1.
What does it charge with? I saw pins at the bottom.
Yeah, I need to look at it more. It might be.
I don't know if Type-C can fit.
I like their website. I don't like their website because it shows a lot, but it's not telling you a lot.
Yeah.
It's just, here's a tablet that's really thin.
Little bit
you can somehow
simplistic.
Yeah, you can store your pencil in it, but as a quote unquote built-in eraser, whatever that is.
Well.
We'll look at it more.
Yeah, we should play with one sometime.
But
That's crazy how thin it is, though.
Yeah, 4.7 millimeters. It's near the top of the page.
Wow.
It's slightly insane as a product, and me in
2 weeks battery life.
Wow. You don't get that in an iPad Pro. But also, I don't know if you get web browsing in this thing. So,
yeah, I'm trying to find
they don't have much other sites.
Yeah.
It's infuriating. I think you have to go to...
Yeah, there's little pins at the bottom.
You have to go to like the main page and scroll all the way down to the bottom. I think there's some tabs down there. But I would...
Oh, yeah. It is. No, it is Type-C.
Oh, even better.
Sweet.
It gets the Drew thumbs up approval.
I wouldn't use it because I don't read a lot of books.
I don't know.
I don't write.
You can write off as a business expense at your new job
But if you want to use it's for students argument, maybe I'll push more people this way. Be like half the price of a Pro iPad, way better battery life. It's thinner if we care about thinness.
Maybe this is something that you do need to review.
Maybe. It might actually be
this. This is probably worth reviewing because you already know what the iPad's...
Over 6,000 reviews and it's 4.5 stars. But again, it's like all the things that it can't do that an iPad can, I'm probably just going to say that's what your phone is for.
Or a computer.
Or a computer. Yeah,
or your TV.
But I can't FaceTime. It's like, okay, use the phone.
Yeah.
Or
is this meant to be a FaceTiming device?
Definitely not.
Something that Randy likes to use his iPad for is a baby monitor.
Yeah.
And so that is something that this can't do. But to be fair, how many people are using their iPads as a baby monitor versus a third-party device that is dedicated towards that?
Or use an old phone.
Or just dedicated device.
Hey, you could buy, I don't know, maybe people don't like combining things, but you could probably buy this and an iPad mini for less money than a Pro iPad.
Yeah.
So use the mini for tablet stuff and then use this for note-taking and Yeah, I don't know. It's worth exploring because it's a cool technology that's underappreciated, in my opinion. But
Right.
I'm glad there's still companies that are exploring it and finding the advantages for it.
There's still corners of the market to explore.
Way cooler than the AI pin. Which
You're going to bring this up in my house, Drew?
Did you hear about Humane though?
I heard something about they're trying to sell the company.
Yeah,
Okay.
it didn't take long, but I'm guessing that's not a good sign if they're looking to be bought out after like a month of their first product launch.
We made the joke in the last or the defunct podcast.
Yes.
Of what was it? Marquez is the destroyer of companies, and then I think Snazzy Labs is the saver of companies or something like that. I forget.
Well, Randy was saying on our deleted episode that Snazzy Labs gives all of us really imposter syndrome because he's so good at what he does. It's just like, oh God, he is so articulate and eloquent in how he phrases everything. It makes all of us go, oh, just watch him. What are we doing? We're just noise in this.
We're sitting right next to an Iron Man 3 poster, Drew.
That's all we're doing. No, but yeah, his content is fantastic.
Sure.
But
With the AI
yeah.
pen.
Yeah, he
Is this something that you
articulated that
think
very
is
well.
worth it or not?
What?
For
The
it
company?
for this product to exist, do you think there is hope for it?
I'm shocked it got into production, personally. I could not be more... I think we disagree on it quite a bit.
Yeah.
I've heard your arguments on it, which I think are solid, about like trying to fight against screen time and fight against phone addiction and stuff.
Yeah.
I just think like this product is so much better because tablets are already in
For
an
remarkable,
identity
yeah.
crisis. So to make one that just intentionally leans, and it's just, I don't know, something about a device that you can just hold and tap and...
You could do that with the Rabbit R1 with holding.
Yeah, we're not
tapping.
talking about the R1. We're talking about the AI pin. But,
Sure,
like,
I guess I am shifting the argument.
Yeah, that's a different can of problems.
But bunnies.
Well, I mean, it's an app at the end of the day, for one.
Sure, and
It's
with AI
running
pen,
Android.
it's not... What is it providing for the user at the end of the day?
It's just a much slower way to do a couple of phone things and hope that it replaces your phone. But
Heck, in the last podcast, we're just chatting that Iris decided to pipe in. And imagine with like an AI pen,
Yeah.
you're just having a conversation and it thinks that you're talking with it.
and it's constantly hot, and its battery was terrible, and it's expensive. All the problems that come with the first gen.
I completely acknowledge all the missteps
Yeah.
with the product.
Even without those first gen problems, though, even let's assume it wasn't hot. Let's assume it was really lightweight and it battery lasted.
Really
2
good
weeks.
at listening to cues
Yeah.
on if you're talking with it. Or
Even
something
all
else.
then, I still don't think it would be a very good product. Like, I just think that form factor is fundamentally not like pinning something to clothing. I don't
Sure.
think it's as simple or as intuitive as just holding a device,
Yeah.
which this does. Like, and this accomplishes, in my opinion, a lot of the goals that they were shooting for.
Remarkable's product.
Yeah, remarkable. It's remarkable. That's a great name.
I think I made Drew a Remarkable sheep.
You probably have. Yeah, it's
All in the span of like 10 to 15 minutes.
well. I didn't talk about it much, but I have used them. I've experienced them before, and I'm just
reigniting
thinking,
your interest now.
this technology is cool, and I didn't feel that way about a projector that goes on my hand.
To be fair, you haven't had hands-on or voice-on
No,
experience with a pen.
From what I've seen, similar to, I didn't have experience with the M4 iPads and Apple Pencil Pro, and then I tried it, and I was like,
Yep.
okay. It's like trying to navigate a UI by moving your hand around like this, or pinching or whatever. It's just
Sure.
I don't.
With EVs, there definitely is that you need to probably get in the vehicle and check it out to form a better opinion
Sometimes,
on the
yeah.
product. But with a lot of these other products, they're just like, it's the new iPad with a new chip in it. It's somewhat
Like,
more...
picture an iPad with a brighter screen.
Okay.
That's the OLED iPads.
Awesome.
You now experienced it. Now
You have
the
experienced.
The Geekbench test. Yeah, they boasted so much about the thickness, and then when I finally got there, I was like,
It feels the same.
"Is it thick? Oh, yeah,
Is this the
I
new
guess-
iPad?
I guess it's a little thinner, but then you put it in the keyboard case, and all the thickness arguments are gone.
Sure.
It's like, okay, it's still this big, chunky thing. So
So with all
the
these...
AI pin.
Okay.
my answer to your question is I thought from a mile away before they even unveiled the thing and they were just teasing it as a projector device. I remember thinking, that's not a good idea. I was like, that's just a really bad screen. At the end of the day, you're still holding out your hand.
Yeah.
I would just put a phone there, and it's infinitely more adjustable and scalable, and the battery's going to last longer than anything that's a wearable. So I remembered when it launched, I was like, or they unveiled it thinking, how did this get investors? Like, how did people think this was going to be a thing? I really genuinely am shocked that it got that far, and no one along the way of prototyping or testing it was like, well, this isn't a good experience, or this isn't a good idea. You probably shouldn't release this. I'm amazed that it's gotten that far personally, which is why I would be shocked if a company bought them out.
Who should buy them?
Maybe someone. I don't think it'd be someone who wants to sell the AI pin.
Okay.
I would guess it'd be someone who sees some other tech, like
Maybe
the
Google.
projector. Yeah, Google would buy them and kill it off immediately.
On brand.
I'm trying to think of some inherent hardware that might be useful in another application.
Some projector technology.
Maybe miniaturized projector technology.
Sony could buy them then.
But they
Does Sony
tried
make
that.
projector? I forget.
Probably.
Who makes
a lot.
projectors these days? I have a mini one somewhere.
Epson. I don't
Epson?
remember.
People who make terrible printers? Okay.
I don't remember, but there was, in the old days, I don't know if you remember, but there was an era where they were trying to put tiny projectors in smartphones where you could put them on a table and cast it onto the wall.
Huh.
I remember seeing ads for it, and they weren't very good. It was very low quality.
I don't remember any of this.
But-
I was probably focused on video games at that point.
Obviously, it died off. It was not popular. There was a much more interesting time in smartphones, I should say, similar to what we have on the EV side of things, where there's so many different approaches
Even
and
though,
styles.
yeah, there's like billions of crossover SUV EVs on the market. At least there's some that are pushing the limits in terms of creative decisions.
Yes, there's a lot of creativity.
Or that's something that we're kind of highlighting in the Defunct podcast was what's there to talk, I guess.
In the tech space, they've all blurred together. It's
Yeah.
like all
or even
these
with like
phones.
Apple, what's new?
Right. They've all made the same rectangles, and they're all buying components and chips from the same companies. Now Qualcomm has a chip that's faster than Apple's chip. It's like, okay, and then Apple passed Qualcomm again, and they're just leapfrogging each other. So we all get the same-ish batteries. We all have similar designs with glass backs and camera bumps and full screens and
Big camera sensor.
yeah, it's just they're all Type-C now because we all just figured out what the best way to make a phone was. So there's not a lot of variety, and there's attempts in the tech space to rethink it, but I think they're just so futile with the PIN or the R1, and they're short-lived. This deserves more attention.
They're remarkable.
Yeah,
I agree.
Yeah, I think I need to check one out here pretty quick, but
You'd have to bring it over here because I really want to check it out.
Yeah, we should.
Or I'll
we
just
should.
go up to your place.
Yeah.
Wherever you are these days,
You
you're
can
all
play
over the
around
place.
with it. But the pin itself as a form factor, I don't believe there's a future for it all.
Okay.
I'm shocked it got that far.
Shifting some of the focus then, I wanted to get your opinion on the podcast. What you think of my new internet.
I'm absurdly jealous. That I think summarizes most of how I feel. I wish mine was that fast.
Yeah, for those, because of course it was voiced in the last podcast, we're just going to keep on hammering this in that, come on OBS, really? you scrapped a pretty good podcast.
Seriously.
Uploading the podcast now is no longer a problem for me. For those that would be waiting patiently for the podcast, thank you for waiting patiently during the time that I would edit them and upload them on Starlink, in which on Starlink it would take 6 to 8 hours to upload it.
It was
It got better over time. It used to be like 12 to 13 to 15 hours or whatever. It got down to about, I'd say maybe the best was like 4 hours at one point.
Wow.
So I guess 4 to 8 hours is probably the band that I saw.
But still, night and day.
It's now decreased to around 4 to 8 minutes.
Different metric.
In terms of
entirely.
uploading the video portion of this podcast.
Yes. That affects my work substantially.
Or even my work as well, because
Yeah.
when I had to upload the podcast, I had to make sure everything was good. Mm-hmm. I crossed all the T's, dotted the I's, and made sure that if there was anything that needed to be altered or adjusted was.
Yeah.
And then even so, when I uploaded it, it's like maybe halfway through, I would think, did I actually get everything? Did everything get done? And there was one or two times where I found through the audio portion of the podcast that there was something wrong, and that meant there was something wrong and probably in the video portion.
So now this whole process had to
So
restart.
I had to get redone.
Now you could take it down, upload the fixed one within
And that's what I did. So
10 minutes.
the wife and I were going to go to the mall last weekend.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to upload the podcast to see right before, like, how long it would take. And it said 5 to 8 minutes. And I'm like, oh, that's great, but we're about ready to leave.
Yeah.
And I could have just let it upload, but I'd still have a whole bunch of stuff to, like, fill out through the uploading process. And I just decided, you know what? It's that quick.
Try again.
Let's just try it again later once we're back from the mall.
Yeah.
And I had no worries and no problems. Wow. And immediately, once I realized how quick it was to upload, I was so close to texting you and Randy in our little group chat saying, it's so amazing.
Rub it in. I know. Honestly, that would make so much bigger difference than a new computer in my life.
Yeah.
Because my export times are, 5-10 minutes.
Sure.
But if my upload could be that fast,
yeah,
what I would pay.
I also tested on the gaming side as well.
Yeah.
This is something that actually wasn't expounded upon in the last podcast.
No, we didn't.
I tested on the gaming side. My buddy we're just playing through the Halo Infinite game on campaign co-op on Legendary, getting our butts kicked because we haven't played Halo in forever. And
I played not long ago for a bachelor party.
Oh, you played Halo 2, yeah.
Yeah. That was amazing.
Halo 2's a bop. But we're playing Infinite, which requires decent internet speeds for co-op.
Right.
And it's a little bit restrictive on the campaign side on like what you can do. But my buddy was telling me that in the past when we tried it, when I had Starlink, I was kind of glitching all over the place from time to time. Like I'd be running and jumping in place. Yeah. And then I would suddenly teleport like a few tens of, maybe not hundreds of meters ahead, but like a decent distance ahead. And he said it wasn't like he was unsure on where I was, but he was just in it for hanging out, chatting, and shooting aliens in the alien world. But now when we played, he said, you haven't glitched at all.
Wow.
And so the only time that I did glitch around was actually a server error that happened. It didn't kill our session on playing the campaign, but we were both like running through a corridor and then suddenly we got teleported back. And immediately I told him, did you experience that? He said, yeah. I'm like, okay, great. It wasn't on Frontier Fiber side. It was on 343's crappy server side.
Yeah.
With whatever choices they made on terms of like just silly design choices for the game. But
I'm a fan of local gaming.
Local co-op is very fun. I think a lot of games, kind of going on the gaming side of tech, I think a lot of developers have pushed that aside when they really need to lean more into it.
There's something, for that bachelor party we did, there was something very different about, and I think Nintendo knows this very well. Yeah. There's something about making a game that everybody has to be together for physically that just makes it so much more.
There's a magic to it.
Yeah. Just being able to talk right there or screen peek or whatever.
Sure.
It just adds a whole new human element that is completely lost whenever you're doing co-op online.
Right.
Again, there's inconsistencies with the connection, and online games too, I feel like, are so dependent on the latest version. They all have to be updated.
And the amount of gigs that you're having to download every single day sometimes.
Yeah, it's constantly. They're putting out these patches, and there was something really magical about the fact that, my cousin collects all this retro stuff, and I was like, hey, I'm throwing a bachelor party for my friend. Do you have like an old Xbox and Halo we could borrow? And he was like, at my house in 30 minutes. He was just like, oh yeah, here, take this. And we literally just plugged it in, threw the disc in, and it boots right up.
On the original Xbox.
On an original. And I was like, the simplicity of that. It wasn't, what's the Wi-Fi password? Is there my controller has to update.
It doesn't have a battery right now.
There's no battery. It plugged right in. And I'm a futurist guy, I like my new tech, but there was something very seamless and smooth.
Oh, you saw me last night. My wife wanted to play Animal Crossing while we were podcasting.
Yeah.
And I was just trying to get the Joy-Con set up.
Right.
And it was just having a hell of a time with just... they're not connected to the console. I've got them in my hand, but
Right.
this one doesn't want to connect. The other one's connected, but the other one isn't. And it's
Yeah,
it's
it
a
was
headache.
like, what was so bad about just the
Wired connection.
for that application? At least I love my AirPods because they just work and they're
Right.
simple. But there's certain applications where just having a wire
Sure.
really does simplify.
Oh, I
a lot.
use it for the podcast with my Sonys.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
like they work great. But even so, with like gaming or local co-op, it's
Right.
great. There's recently my buddies and I played some COD Zombies.
Oh.
And that was great. And I physically grabbed like either a monitor or a separate TV from another room, put it right next to the TV that I've got in the living room.
Right.
And we just had them right next to each other. Had actually the TV on this desk that we've got in between us. And we just did console-to-console connection, which was also a hell of a time because we had to download updates
Love
on
that.
the consoles. And
I love that.
but we're able to just connect them together, and ta-da, there's a system link.
yes.
And then even so, you said Nintendo kind of has a focus on it. There's a game called Pico Park, and which is very retro-esque looking. It's a little pixel guy that you control. But you can, I think, connect up to like, 8 to 10 people in this game.
Wow.
And it's just a side-scroller like Mario Party.
Yeah.
Or not Mario Party, but Super Mario.
yeah.
But the goal is to get everyone, and in some levels you can have some people die.
Yeah.
But the goal is to get everyone from one side of the scrolling map to the other side.
Right,
And it
right.
scrolls based off of what level you're on.
Right.
But in some of those, the game has to restart when someone dies.
Oh,
And it's the most hilarious situation where like you've died 20 or there's this one person that keeps on dying in
Yes.
like the endless pit and they're not making the jump and everyone just glares and looks at them. They're like, make the jump, don't mess it up. And it's like the 20th
Right.
time that you're going through this and then they mess it up and everyone just raises their hands
Yes.
screaming. It's awesome.
Right.
There's an infectious part of that human element in
There is.
person.
Totally.
There are what's it called? Consequences for your actions. But it's not like someone's gonna be
the public shame.
yeah. But
like
it's
that.
fun. I think
agree.
more local co-op stuff needs to happen. Or at least less like there's a new update for this thing, but
I
like
know.
being a little bit more seamless with the experience.
Right. There's a lot of people I've talked to that are just fed up with the amount of. Like, I have a friend who was on pretty slow internet because he lives in a rural area, and he asked him move his console to his friend's house to update it.
Oh my gosh.
Because it takes like hours and hours
Use
and
the
hours.
gas in his car to go there.
Yeah.
Then-
No, it's ridiculous. And I told him to get Starlink, but it's just kind of expensive for him.
Sure.
So
I mean,
it's
$120 a month.
yeah, it's up there. For
not
some
like the
people,
best
it's
internet.
all they got. But yeah,
And that's something I'm really kind of diving into now is
Mm-hmm.
I can actually play multiplayer games now.
you've got.
It used to be like I could kind of make
support it.
multiplayer games. Now it's like I can play multiplayer games and it's not laggy anymore.
But and that's good. But I still think we've gotten so used to these game companies have gotten so used to releasing things unfinished. Which
and
is why
and you don't own it. There's no physical copy.
I don't feel bad about not being very involved in the gaming community because it feels like everyone's upset about things all the time. About how the game companies are operating, how the servers are working, how reliable the games are, the cost of everything.
Sure.
And I was just like, I hope you can find joy in it, but I just genuinely just only hear complaints. I don't hear a lot of... oh, I'm really enjoying this. It's like the only times I hear that is when people pull out the old consoles or old games and play something that has a lot of childhood nostalgia.
Or I was telling you when you got here was I'm playing Horizon Forbidden West now.
Oh, yeah.
The sequel to Horizon Zero Dawn. And I've just been infatuated with that game. It's a single player game. There's no multiplayer component
That
to
helps.
it. And the visuals are stunning. The fact that it takes place like in a futuristic North America setting, and there's actually many locations that you could point out being like, I recognize that rock. Like that is a cliff that I've taken a picture of. I'll put it in here now. Like
there you go.
There is a great comparison that I put on, I think, your Discord.
Okay.
Of like, here's a picture that I took in Zion National Park.
Wow.
And here's in-game Zion National Park, that same
thing.
view, and it looks strikingly similar.
That's cool.
But like, I found with a lot of my experience with video games now, I used to be a big multiplayer game guy.
Sure.
I've completely shifted because of my internet situation for a while
Right.
to single player games.
It's affected that.
And it's definitely opened up my eyes to you don't have to do an online experience, and you don't have to subject yourself to kind of that torment of constant updates, constant like tweaks.
That's what pushed me away from Windows originally.
Sure.
Like I owned a PC. I was using it to make content, and on Windows 7, I was going well too. It was faster than my Mac, and I was like, okay, this is great. And then they said, okay, Windows 10 is ready, and I was like, all right. Well, they said it's better than 8. I didn't have a touchscreen or anything, so I was like, cool, I'll try 10. Everyone's saying 10 is good, and boy, it
was a very rocky start for 10.
Ever since 10, I have always had the Microsoft, like, this has got to update now. You boot it up, it's got to update again. We got to update again. I don't feel very confident in what I've heard from Windows 11. There's a lot of people complaining, and this recall feature,
oh gosh,
to me just sounds like this is going to backfire.
You want to try to describe what the recall feature is for those that don't know?
It's like it's constantly taking screenshots, not like JPEG screenshots, but like data of what apps are running and where the windows are and where the mouse and keyboard are and what your computer is physically doing.
What tabs and everything.
Yeah.
All the file folders that have whatever content they have in there.
It's constantly monitoring all of those so that if you need to, you can jump back.
Like Time Machine.
Kind of like a more real-time version of Time Machine, yeah. It's like activate the Omega 13 and just what was I doing? I personally don't see a use case for me for that, but I heard others say in IT or something.
Well, it's great for if you accidentally delete a file or something gets scrubbed for some reason.
Yeah, something like that.
But it sounds like there's a lot of opportunity for nefarious
That's
use.
what I was going to say. I was like, that sounds like something that's going to fail or use up a lot of resources.
Oh my gosh, the amount of hard drives.
I don't know. Maybe they've designed it in a really smart way.
Some way to compress the files. I don't think so.
You
look at gaming companies these days, and they don't give a crap about storage.
Like, no, it's 100 gigs. Just download it.
No
big deal.
200 gigs. Call of Duty's like 200 gigs every single time you like
ridiculous.
download it.
The original Halo game, I want to say, was
Halo 1.
It's like megabytes.
Yeah.
They were so small. They were so...
Well, there used to be a focus on data efficiency.
Well, and just the data on them wasn't that...
Well, true.
Rich. It was like everything was pretty low resolution, but people still had fun. It wasn't like...
No, but...
It wasn't like that added resolution increased the enjoyment of the game. I mean, look at Minecraft, that's... I haven't played it in years, and it's probably gotten a lot more complicated since the last time.
Has it been years?
Yeah, probably. I
remember you streaming it on the gaming channel a while.
That was
a year and a half ago, maybe 2.
At least a year and a half, maybe 2. But there's the graphics were not. Graphics were just. It's like the kind of paint you use. Some paint looks more lifelike than others, but
it's the mechanics of the game,
and it has the potential to severely limit the accessibility to the game with the file sizes and what consoles it runs on, and that's how they, I guess, stay in business, because if we all just kept using the old retro games, they wouldn't have recurring revenue.
Right.
But
anyways, with Windows
11, to me, it seems like not recall specifically is a concern of mine, but it's more what went wrong with Windows 10 and even 8 is that instead of trying to refine and enhance existing experiences, it feels like they're trying to add on things that are prone to causing more problems. It's like you're throwing more eggs that the OS is juggling, and you're saying, okay, now start juggling this. Now start juggling the torches and knives, and you're throwing more and more to the computer. Whereas to me, maybe people disagree with me, but Mac OS has stayed relatively consistent with just being good at what it is, not trying to add too much additional functionality or capability that might really chog up the CPU or the neural cores or the GPU. Whereas Windows is like, now it's going to do this. Now it's going to add this to it, add this to it.
Do you think maybe the recall feature should have been like an added on maybe not third-party accessory, but it's another product that you could buy, that you could plug into the computer, almost like a NAS or whatever?
Maybe, but I have a feeling it's only going to be on the Surface X Elite equip or Plus, whatever. The Snapdragon chips, there's several.
I need to look at Windows again. It's been a while.
Well, it's a big market because there's it's not just Microsoft making them. I was mainly referring to the Surface ones.
Okay.
Because those came out, and they're all ARM now, which is what people are excited about.
Versus League.
Versus League. Yeah, they're finally taking ARM a bit more seriously so they can kind of spec match with the MacBooks with battery life and performance, which is good. But again, I don't think there's much cross shopping. I think there's people who are buying Windows PCs and people buying Macs. I don't think there's a lot of people that are like, oh, the PC's faster. Okay, I'll switch to a PC. It's like, before the Apple Silicon transition, everybody was buying. There were still people buying Macs, even though they were objectively slower and worse than the PCs of the time.
Sure.
But they wanted Mac OS. They wanted the ecosystem and they wanted what apps were on Mac, and people who wanted Windows had applications for that. So they like to flex on each other, which one is faster, but I think that's mostly just nerds online arguing for their team.
Yeah.
They want the Windows team to be faster, but is there genuinely people that would have...
There's some statistic that they pushed out with one of the Surfaces, or was it was some product that came out recently, and they're saying like, oh yeah, it's like 15 times faster than the M4 chip or the M3 chip or whatever.
Yeah.
But it was like for one very specific thing, and it was for like multi-core usage or whatever. I'd have to look at it again.
But do you think the people who are into Windows and following that would suddenly want to buy a Mac if the M5 was twice as fast as the Snapdragon? No, they don't care.
They've got different use cases.
Yeah, it comes down to the OS.
What they prefer as well.
Right. It's just personal preference at the end.
Yeah.
So I'm happy for them because I know there are people who are buying Surfaces, but now they just get a lot of the advantages that we've been utilizing with ARM. So it's like, all the better to you. I'm not saying they're bad. It's just not for me. But
right.
Yeah, that's the vibe I'm getting a lot with all the AI talk, which I'm pretty sick of. And I think audiences are too. I don't know if it's just me noticing more memes about it, but there's a lot of memes going around now about just like, we took something you already had and slapped AI.
Your sunglasses have AI. Oh wait, that's already a thing.
Right, and especially in the Apple rumor community, it feels like the latest desperate attempt to make headlines is just say there will be AI features. What is the AI? We don't know. They'll tell us. It's like, that doesn't mean it's good. That to me just seems like a template response for they'll do something.
Your calendar app now has a separate note.
Right, and they keep saying, this will have AI features, this will have AI, or will incorporate AI features. And it's like, I'm getting the vibe that these aren't going to be very useful. They're just going to market them as AI so that they're with it, so that it's with the times. So I've been trying to cling on to any dub rumor that's not AI related. The one that was most interesting to me was that there's talk that they're going to redesign Control Center on the iPhone, which has been pretty much the same since iOS 11. So it's been a while that we've had this same like swipe down from the top and everything.
We talked a fair bit amount of that in the last podcast, trying to theorize how do you redesign Control Center, or at least how do you make it accessible in a different way on the iPhone at least.
I think we joked that Randy would make a whole video on his channel about this, which now he probably should because we lost the podcast.
I don't want to remind him again.
So he can weigh on his opinion, but credit to Randy, his argument in favor of why they should be rethinking Control Center is that later this year we're probably going to get the largest iPhone ever at like 6.9 inches.
A little hard to reach the top right.
So stretching up, and now that mini iPhones are slowly being phased out and screens just seem to be getting bigger and bigger, reaching from the top right to get to Control Center might get a little tedious and tiresome. So I was theorizing, like, how do you redesign it? What do you do? Like, how do you make it easier, more accessible?
Your idea was like from the bottom right corner and you kind of swipe diagonally.
Corner. I also feel like there's a gesture that does nothing now that might be useful, which is swiping left or right on the dock.
on the bottom.
The 4 apps.
Yeah.
You can swipe on those and nothing happens, but you swipe on the home screen, that's how you move around the pages.
Sure.
And you have widgets to the left, which some may argue is unnecessary because we can have widgets on the home screen now. So do you still need a big panel of just widgets? Maybe they have the data on how often is that utilized. I don't know. How do you use it?
The control center?
Not control center. Like from your lock screen or from the home screen, you swipe to the left and there's just a bunch of widgets.
Never knew about that.
You must have at some point. Yeah, you swipe one way to launch camera, right? From the lock screen. And then the other way, there's just a bunch of widgets.
Never done that.
I'm willing to bet you're not alone in that. Maybe a few people do use it, but hey, they removed the Today view on iPadOS, so
rest in peace.
You rest in peace. But if maybe they build Control Center, like there's a gesture, but there's also like a quick way.
My thought was
access it.
Stacking it into the search menu on the iPhone where you swipe to the left, or pretty much screen goes
There's
to
a
the
search
right.
bar, or you can swipe down on your wallpaper.
Well, it'd just be on that page. So, like, you know, if you scroll one way, you're just seeing more apps that you've built up, unless you have you've structured your phone home screen to where it's only on one page.
Right.
You scroll the other way, there's the search with some other stuff on the bottom, like previously used apps or anything like that.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe build it in there as like a tab that you can tap on.
I think I've seen other people pitch this, but putting Control Center toggles on the home screen. Treat them like apps. So now you have apps, but you also have...
Wouldn't that clog up the home screen a little bit more?
Well, it's your choice. If you wanted to, you could.
Okay.
It would be like on the dock now, you could have messages, music, and flashlight.
Okay.
Instead of launching an app, now you can just tap it. And
make it more of an app or a tool.
So it's one tap instead of swipe up, then hit flashlight.
Sure.
So if someone uses the flashlight a lot, they just pin it to their home screen, or building in display sliders right there. So you have your apps, but you can also adjust
more
the brightness.
active widgets. No. That's not a thing.
Didn't they add that last year or something?
The Tesla widget that I use still doesn't allow for that.
Well, that's a different problem.
Yeah, it might be a handshake between Tesla and...
But I thought they said last year that there's interactive widgets now or something like that.
I recall that being a hype, but...
Did developers
I've not seen that necessarily from my
Yeah.
usage.
So,
maybe it is a thing for others, but I don't...
That's the type of thing I'm trying to be more interested in leading into DubDub, because I just... Everything AI to me feels like hype now. It doesn't feel like legitimate.
Well, it's just... Here's a tool that has now gotten smarter.
Right.
We're going to call it AI.
We put the little sparkle effect next to it. That means it's powered by AI.
Yep, and it sits there for about 10 or 15 seconds.
There's so many memes about it now, and I think people are kind of, especially after Google I/O, and
oh my gosh, it was like 250 times or something. I forget what the count was.
they said it at the end too.
And then they added like one extra.
Yeah, they
like
used AI to
251 or whatever.
count it or whatever. But that event was so bad. It was so dry.
Yeah, I watched it on 2 times speed.
Oh, I tried to watch it. I was almost debating reacting to it, and then was really glad I didn't. I was like, that would have been rough as a stream.
You would have just been making fun of it the whole time, probably.
But they didn't give me much to work with. The material was so bland.
So you and Randy were going to record the podcast, I think shortly after that? Or no, maybe just...
That was for the iPad event.
Yeah, I was thinking, I maybe conflating with the iPad, but I was thinking I should remember all this stuff from the Google event so we could talk about it in the tech podcast. I forgot all the names. I forgot all the features.
There's too many.
There was just too much stuff to cover. I think what Google would benefit from is having multiple events that are focused on these particular AI.
I think it's an articulation problem too.
Well, that's what I'm trying to tackle.
They're not great at explaining what they do.
Well, they just have a whole bunch of stuff and a whole bunch of things that they do with that stuff. And they're having a hard time trying to figure out how do we fit this all in one package as our like dub per se.
And the funny thing about that event was it was meant to be the consumer focused one.
With the guy at the beginning that's running around.
Google. Yeah, he's funny. That was the best part.
I don't know who he was, but he was funny.
That was probably my favorite part of the whole thing. But there were, Google I/O is like a week-long event, and there was a later presentation said, this is for businesses.
Okay.
So that was not, the one we saw was not even intended for business relationships. We were watching the consumer grade one, and it was like, I'm sure you've got something special, Google, but boy, the marketing really needed to step in there and find a way to streamline or simplify all the branding terminology and how everything works. And honestly, some of the demos just were flat out bad, in my opinion, where they're like, I'm going to open up the camera. Why won't this record play? And
then it took a while.
It just loads this entire wall of text. And it's small text. It wasn't like, it didn't look like an intuitive solution. It was like, so you expect grandma who doesn't know how the turntable works for some reason to pull up the phone, know how to access this feature,
and then have to
and say, how do I do this one thing? And then get like 50 answers all at once. And then shortly after the event, did you see some of the things Gemini was suggesting?
Oh, from Reddit, because they have a partnership with Reddit. So it's like, if cheese is falling off of your pizza, glue helps. Or like, you should definitely jump off of a bridge or something like that.
Yeah, there was just, and I don't know if you've noticed this, but Google search has gotten, in my opinion, a lot more confusing because of
it has gone rough.
It's like, before, the system was pretty effective. Before this whole AI thing got involved.
Right.
Where you would search something, and it would, at the very top, highlight what it thought the answer was.
Yeah.
And that most of the time was pretty accurate. But now you have let Gemini try to answer this, and then it gives you probably a longer than necessary answer.
Yep.
Says, but by the way, this might be totally wrong because it's AI generated. And then you have to scroll down
even more
to get to here's what I think the answer was. And then below that, you have your links.
Right.
And it's just messy.
121, by the way.
Oh, wow.
Is how many times they said AI.
I found Apple beats that.
So this is what helps me on those, even though it's like a giant slog fest of like, here's what we're doing, but we don't know how to articulate it well.
Attention.
I commentate in the Discord on the tech server or channel.
Yeah.
And I just like, Dennis introducing potential Google Glass successor was interesting.
Yeah, that was a weird way to tease it, I guess.
Yeah, but like I don't remember that unless I look back at my feelings or thoughts of, oh, hey, they're using glasses with AI built in. Is this Google Glass reincarnate, or is this just Meta glasses, or is this their own? I don't know what it is.
That's the problem.
It was interesting for them to use.
There's
but
just a bunch of stuff they throw up there and we were like, wait, is that a thing you're going to sell? And they go, I don't know. Anyway, tokens. So many tokens.
Yeah, all for you guys, but here's the subscription model for our tokens.
Right. And
it means nothing to me, because even though in my job, I know some relevance of what tokens are. But at the same time, it's how does this help consumers
to use it passively in an event, I thought was a little bizarre.
Well, these are people that are being introduced to like AI capabilities.
Yeah.
It's not, here's what you can use as a developer.
Right.
In which they want to communicate stuff to developers. But how do you communicate the developer stuff to the general audience without confusing them entirely?
Yeah.
And that's something that even as someone who's somewhat tech literate, was having a very tough time trying to figure out what they were selling me at that moment.
Yeah. It's like, what are we talking about? Yeah, and now we've got Dub, which is, now it's Apple's moment to...
AI 240 times.
Right. And I've got a feeling it's going to be a bunch of stuff that we go, oh, that's it. Like, that was the big AI feature they were hyping up.
I'm interested in what the new look and feels are with the new OSs.
Yeah, that would be more interesting to me.
Of like what the theme is going to be, also the names as well. We speculated on what the names of Mac OS might be and all that.
Yeah, maybe we can't recite every trademark name they have, but we could we could remind our guesses.
Right, so thankfully you gave the whole list.
I think I said Sequoia is a trademark name Apple already owns, so I felt comfortable guessing.
Here.
I have 15 different trademark names.
So the ones that we landed, there's a bunch of trademark names, but the ones that we landed on, I believe, were Sequoia, Shasta, and Redwood.
Who said Redwood? You?
Randy. I said Shasta because there hasn't been a lot of North State love for
Big mountain.
California stuff.
It's a mountain of features.
Well, it's part of like a bunch of the mountains up in the Pacific Northwest.
Yeah.
You got Rainier,
I've been
you
there.
got many of them.
I'm just trying to think of the marketing angle. They can say it'll
Mount St. Helens.
a mountain of AI.
Oh God,
They'll have some.
this is the summit of AI capability.
There you go. Yeah, they'll have some
Powered by the M chip in Mac OS.
Yeah,
Or whatever.
that's kind of what I was actually. Randy asked us on the last episode what we were most interested in as a sleeper. Like, what are people not expecting that would be big? That might be a bigger deal. Mine was Mac OS itself. It feels like every year, no one really has many things on their wish lists for Mac OS because it just works and it's functional. And then
It just works.
suddenly there's a few more things that are actually really useful. And it's like, oh, like last year it was all the continuity camera behind you, screen sharing and your face capture overlay and stuff. And I use that now all the time.
I would like to see more connectivity between the phone, the iOS
Yes.
and Mac OS. I think I mentioned it on either the last podcast or the podcast before. Being able to have like a window of your iPhone.
That's a good idea.
Because many times in these, I mean, this is, of course, these are my gripes or issues that I run into in our use of
Sure.
Apple devices. But recording with your phone right now,
Yeah.
you can't use your phone.
Yeah.
If you wanted to look something
up.
up-
Too useful. It's
It's been great as a camera right now, but you can't go there to like look up
I can't
what you
look
have.
at notes. I
And
gotta
that's
buy
what I
an
run.
iPad, right?
Yeah, and that's what I run to with mine. Is like even though I've got an iPad and Mac OS or the Mac in front of me,
Yeah.
there's something on my phone that I need.
Yeah.
My cloud is full, so I can't just like look up the photo or the notes or anything
Yeah.
like that. But I would like to access it. I already have it connected by wire and by.
Right. This could
Wireless
easily be
connection.
one of those things they limit to a Type-C.
Oh my god!
They'd
Don't
be like, the data is just too much.
Right, but being able to have almost a developer-esque view of what your
Yeah.
phone's
It'd just be
display
like,
is,
now you can control your phone as it's a camera
Yes.
from the Mac.
that would be great.
That's a great idea.
And which probably not going to happen, but if it does, that's probably the one feature that I would love to see
Yeah.
at DubDub.
Like,
Or Triple V. As
right.
I'm
There's just a
calling
lot
it.
of multitasking things. It could be social media based. It could be controlling your car, if you're using it as continuity camera, but now you want to cool your car. I guess you can integrate it as a widget on the Mac, but still,
nice.
there's a bunch of little things. I know that Apple's response to that is probably going to be like, well, it's the ecosystem. You can just access whatever app you want on your phone on the Mac, but no, I know what you're saying. I
Well,
get
it
it.
ensures that if you own an iPhone and a Mac and you've connected them, then yes, you can have that cross compatibility of like
Yeah.
being able to use your phone with your computer. But if you don't have an iPhone, then you can't use this feature. So it's only encouraging
They
the
like that.
strength of the ecosystem.
They're a fan of locking you in like
Yeah.
that. So, and that's not an AI feature.
No, it's a feature that you could actually utilize, and they could just flaunt, hey, while you're doing this whole top-down
Right.
camera BS
That
that
never worked.
never turned into anything because the viewpoint is terrible on it,
Yeah.
at least like something that is a little bit more usable of being able to dive into your phone. Mm-hmm. Maybe they'd probably just push iCloud stuff at this point. They'd probably say just use iCloud. But
Probably.
it would be nice to have that utility. But
Yeah.
I don't know, they'll probably just say, the control center on the Mac OS has now changed
we changed
in the background
Right, new wallpaper.
because it's a new version.
That's the main change you notice every
Yeah.
year. This
Yeah.
is the new default wallpaper.
Something like that with the phone would be great for my
I'd
use
love
case
that.
or our use cases since we do use our phones.
Especially because they're becoming more and more cameras.
Yeah.
Even for Apple. They were even hyping it up with that new Final Cut camera app.
That'd be cool to check out if we ever do an in-person with Randy, all three of
I
us
think we
together.
should. Yeah.
Get like,
Turn all of our phones into a multicam setup.
have one close up, one far away, one skew to the side.
We just need an M1 iPad.
That's impossible.
Or we find a way to get Final Cut for iPad on our Mac.
That'd be a
because
nice
The
option.
Mac can run iPhone and iPad apps. That's been a thing. Sometimes you have to jump through a couple.
Maybe this is what Apple's teasing then with the iPad event.
Yeah, that doesn't seem fair to me that iPhone multicam feature only works with the iPad. Why couldn't a Mac do the same thing? There's no reason.
Sure.
The MacBook needs iPad OS, is what we're saying.
Yeah.
So we can have the Final Cut multicam.
The one thing that we want from iPad OS on Mac.
Yeah, that should not be exclusive. But do you have any closing thoughts before we depart? For
Apple should
Or,
probably make some competitor to OBS at this point, because that'd also be nice coming out of WW.
that would be
So that
cool.
way we could. I would say that, but then also, you guys and I came in at the tail end of this practice that you guys had for the podcast recordings.
Yeah.
Is you'd use FaceTime for talking with each other.
They should, if they want FaceTime to be like a Zoom competitor, they should build in recording features.
That'd be great.
Where you can rearrange the faces. And again, with all the neural cores, you can mask us out and put us, all three of us,
Reactions.
reacting to the screen. So you share one person's screen, and then we're all masked out perfectly in front of it or something.
Or have like what the presenter, almost like a PowerPoint.
Yeah.
Presenter view versus what you're seeing
Yeah.
on like the background.
There
side
could be
of things.
really slick animations, and you just hit record and save it. It could save to iCloud if you're that kind of person with iCloud money. Then you could save it locally. I don't know why I've never thought of that, but yeah, an OBS competitor, even though it's free.
I'm just thinking about what our problems are right now
What problems could Apple solve
for us.
for us that are not AI features?
Yeah. And these are perfectly valid features because these are problems that we're facing right now.
Yeah.
Recording podcasts.
There you go. But no, people do meetings and stuff. And if with the AI features, I could see like, and here's a transcript.
Oh, that'd be nice.
And you can
Goes
label.
into the Notes app.
Oh, dude, that could be expanded upon from Apple Podcasts.
Takes it into some of the notes that it takes for closed captioning or other stuff.
So
puts
it,
into your calendar.
it
becomes
recognizes
an action
different
item.
voices.
That too.
It says, and because we're all calling from separate places, it should be really easy
Contact cards.
to isolate the texts. Mm-hmm. So you could say, oh, they said this and this person said this, and you keep the captions separated.
Turn to a calendar event or a reminder and all that. There's your AI capability built into a usable software package.
Just, yeah, really good transcriptions, and it can summarize work meetings.
Only powered with M4.
And
I think that would be worth it. I would buy an M4 thing if they gated that to M4.
I hope they don't.
I would. I mean, it'd be terrible. I don't want to get rid of either of my devices. My MacBook Air and my Studio are like
Yeah,
phenomenal. But
Sure.
if it meant we could have that capability,
that'd be
it
really
would probably it'd be them pointing a gun at our feet, saying, "You're buying M4.
cool. You want this.
You are buying M4."
I'm still going to kick and complain because I'm going to say, this could have been on my M1
Oh
Max.
yeah, but
What do I have? I think I have a 16-core neural engine. That should be plenty.
I think I've got the same thing.
Yeah, yours is M1 Max.
Yeah.
Right? So yeah, we both have.
We would both be forced to upgrade.
We have lots of neural cores. They can do something with that.
But
Come on,
if it
Zoom-
means we get this
if Zoom can record a meeting
on a Windows 10 PC that I use at work,
practically anything, yeah, and it just says, there's just a little red dot that appears so that
you
the
can also
other
add
person.
closed captioning whenever as well on Zoom meetings. And also add a recording at whatever time.
It's like the reactions thing, but useful.
Yeah. Instead of me, you, and Randy accidentally triggering
Just
the
random.
reactions.
It's come up in the worst times. They were cool at first, and then they very quickly were like, "Oh God."
Oh, it's usually fine when like Randy's just sitting here with like
Yes, he was
his
sitting.
fist on the desk, and then it gives a thumbs up while he's being angry or you're being upset about something.
That's gonna happen the moment I say like the most controversial,
iMac is the best.
terrible thing. No, I'm gonna say some horribly
Why would you say
politically
something like
incorrect thing, and then it'll go thumbs up, or something really sad. Like
that? I can't believe
a family member just passed away, and then all the
Thumbs up.
confetti.
Steve Jobs died again. Thumbs up.
Again? How is this possible? Yeah, sorry, I probably shook the table this whole time, but you're audio listeners. You don't mind that, right? Anyway,
They're just washing dishes or driving to work.
I love your ideas. That was a good pitch. FaceTime should get screen recording.
That would be nice.
And
It'd become a lot more reliable than it has in the past.
yeah, with a transcript, and then honestly, they should bake in a way for you to just turn any FaceTime call into a Apple podcast.
Yeah.
They own both ends.
Yeah.
Why not?
Pipe it straight to Apple Podcasts.
Boom.
Even make it like a 99-cent fee or whatever per month or whatever. It's another subscription.
They like recurring revenue.
But if that means that we have to do less work.
Yeah. And you could incorporate a video element to Apple Podcasts.
Yeah. Literally take on Spotify and whoever they partnered with for that video portion of it. You have to go through some. It was like Mammoth or I forget the name of it.
These are free ideas, Apple. You're welcome.
Please.
Please do them. All right. We'll catch you next week. Hopefully. Take care.
Bye. So we don't make a bunch of noise. It made that splashing sound.
Teabagging with eye contact. Welcome back to the Telosive Tech Podcast.